Drums, girls, and dangerous pie. Good news, bad news. If you think about it, past a certain point, drum lessons are a complete waste of money. You go there, and some guy listens to you playing a couple of book exercises and jamming to a few CDs. Then he assigns you new book exercises and CDs, and your mom pays him $20 for the hour. Next, you repeat as necessary for a bunch of years. So I realized one day that, hey, I had all the drum books and CDs I could ever need, and I could assign myself the next 2 pages of each book every week. All I had to do was bag my drum lessons, and I'd be saving the family $80 a month. Just like that, Mrs. Galley said, why don't you try working on the things you can change? But how do you tell this to your drum teacher after 5 years together? This wasn't just any old drum teacher either. Mr. Stoll had attended every single one of my school concerts since I'd started lessons. He had invited me to probably 10 of his gigs to watch him play, and had once let me sit in on drums at a big band concert for 1,000 people. At the time, I had just been terrified, but later, I figured out how amazingly cool that had been of him. So I couldn't just stop showing up. I needed a grand gesture to soften the blow, and I came up with a beautiful one. The day of the last lesson came, and I asked my mom to drop me off a few minutes early and to let me pay Mr. Stoll, then meet her outside at the end. I hadn't told the Rents anything about this plan and didn't want to take any chances of Mom and Mr. Stoll talking that day. I had shoved something into my stick bag before leaving the house and was all ready for action. So I went in, we exchanged pleasantries, and I even got through a few exercises before Mr. Stoll noticed I was all sweaty and shaky. What's wrong, kid? Well, I have some bad news. What? Did you get kicked out of All City or something? Worse. Is it your brother? Not exactly. My family has a lot of expenses with the hospital thing, and my parents are all worried about money. And I decided I can't have drum lessons anymore. I'm sorry, but we can't afford it, and I can't pay, and I'm sorry. You said that already, kid. I did? I'm sorry. There you go again. I brought you something. Let me just get it. I reached into my bag and pulled out Mr. Stoll's gift. I kept it behind my back for a moment, then said, look, you've really been like a mentor to me, and you've taught me more than I could ever have imagined, and I wanted to give you something to remember me by. So anyway, here it is. And I held the special sticks out to him. You remember, the ones that Carter Buford of the Dave Matthews Band, my drumming idol, signed for me? The ones Jeffrey used to stir his dangerous pot? Kid, those are your prized possession. Taking those would be like kicking you when you're down. Listen, how about we just look from now on, your lessons are free. Don't worry about it. It's my pleasure to help my best student out. Really? You really mean it? Yeah, I do. Now, let's get back to work. We were on page 17 of the Rudiment book, right? Yes, sir. Oh, one other thing. You might want to spray those things with Lysol or something. Is it me, or do they smell like rotten eggs? At the end of the lesson, I realized that I couldn't tell my mom that I had made this deal with Mr. Stoll, so I just ripped up the check she had given me. I knew that in the long run, that was about as useful as duct taping over your car's fuel gauge so you won't run out of gas. But in the short run, delusion was an easier path than truth. And come on, you have to admit, the deception was all for a good cause. That week, after school, we were supposed to be having rhythm section rehearsal for All City on Tuesday and Thursday. Our concert was only a month away, and we needed the extra tightening up work. On Tuesday, Annette was absent, so I was the only one in our van on the way to the high school. I walked into the high school band room and started setting up the conga drums next to the drum set. Renee's boyfriend, Biff, was already plugging in his guitar. The bass player was tuning up, and the senior pianist was warming up with scales. After the usual round of high pez, high pez, high pez, everyone turned toward the band room door, which was slowly creaking open. Biff called out, "You can come in. It's okay. The peasant is fully housebroken. He almost never bites anymore." An arm came through the space between the door and the frame. An arm encased in a cast. Annette's arm. Then we heard her voice. "A little help here? Anybody?" The bass player was closest, so he went trotting over and opened the door all the way. Annette came staggering in. She had been trying to carry a huge folder of sheet music in the crook of her injured arm. As Mr. Watrous saw what was going on, he walked over too, just in time to hear Annette's tale. "Here's my folder. I won't be playing in the spring concert. I fell down the stairs at my house last night and broke my arm in 3 places. They said it won't be better until at least May. I'm sorry." Mr. Watrous looked pretty perturbed by this news. Every teacher in the world has a soft spot for Annette. Plus, the girl's a musical dynamo. He was very kind about it, though. "It's okay, Annette. Why don't you come on in, make yourself comfortable, and stay for the rehearsal? You can be our critic." Would you dig that? Yes, he was the last man in America who could say dig with a straight face without referring to the process of using a tool to remove dirt from the ground. She didn't look like this was the chance of a lifetime or anything, but she did smile a little then. I had a feeling she would have been crushed to be excluded completely, and this gave her a way to stick around and still feel like she belonged. "Sure. Thanks, Mr. W." We settled down for practice. It must have been hard for Annette, but she watched us play for the next 2 hours without a break. Occasionally, she whispered something to the senior piano player or Mr. Watrous, but other than that, all she did was listen and listen to the music she wouldn't